Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. I'm Giulia D'Agnolo Vallan, and this is a Sag Harbor Cinema Conversation.
I am delighted to welcome with us today filmmaker Ramin Bahrani, director of the beautiful film The White Tiger. Welcome, Ramin, and thank you for being with us.
Hi, thanks. Thanks for having me and good to see you.
So I'm going to start kind of at the end. Did you expect the film to be so successful? I mean, the weekend it opened, it was the second most watched film on Netflix, and then it went on to do 27 million viewers in a month. Did you expect this film to hit the zeitgeist so much?
Not really, no. I mean, it is kind of amazing. Like it's 27 million accounts, they told me, is conservatively 60 million people, conservatively, because like one account has 2-3 people and families or whatever. And my movies, I make independent movies. So the idea that many people would watch anything I made was totally not expected. But also really, other than amazing and a great experience and a great feeling, it's really it changes your perspective about what this means, like global streaming movie. Not only its ability to reach all over the world, but you start to realize as an independent filmmaker making movies in America, that in fact, like America is just a tiny portion of who's going to watch your movie now. It's not even the biggest market for you. It's like becoming one of the smaller markets suddenly, which is really interesting for someone like me to think about,
But I think you're right, and I think it's true that streaming worldwide enlarges your audience. But I also think, and I think I told you since the first time I saw the film, that I really think the film hits the zeitgeist. It's the disconnect between, which is not only economic but also cultural, between the rich and then the poor. And it's interesting because the novel was written in 2008. So can you talk a little bit about the relationship between the film and the specific of our time?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I remember when I showed a first cut to Scott Stuber at Netflix, I remember he said, I always thought the movie would have a global potential, but in the age of COVID, he said it seems more relevant than ever before. And I think he was talking about exactly what you said. The divide between rich and poor was growing, and the strain on average people was and now still is so tremendous. So we end up seeing basically as I started to think about it during the editing of the film, the character of Ballroom, or the servant class, it's basically the people who do tasks for us now. It's like on our cell phones, we have a directory, a Rolodex of servants. They're drivers, they're delivery people for food, groceries. They're the people you push a button and they show up and put together your IKEA table, and you pay them a small amount of money. This is basically the gig economy. So, and the idea that most people in most countries feel there's something rigged against them by the system being something economic and political. I think that started to feel more and more uncomfortably true to people,
I think one of the reasons that the film is, as beside what the themes that we're talking about, has such a universal appeal. It's his humor. The film makes its way, as the book did, its way into you through humor. Can you tell me how did you manage to preserve the tone of Ravin's book?
Yeah, I mean, thank God for the book. I mean, I have to say, this is a book I've always loved. I mean, a small history of it. Arvind Adiga, the author of the novel, is a close friend of mine. We went to college together, and for 25 years, we've been talking about my movies and his books and movies in general. Our friendship started through movies, through watching movies together at Columbia. And he's been reading all my scripts and giving notes, and I've been reading his manuscripts and giving notes. So I started reading rough drafts of The White Tiger in 2004. So 4 years before it was published. And immediately I was in love with the book, and it's so funny. He has an amazing sense of humor, Arvind, and the tone of the book, it's really elusive because it's funny, it's satirical, it's serious. It shifts in the middle of the movie and becomes darker and more. The character starts to go a little bit crazy, and has sees things or talks to animals. There all kind of crazy stuff happens, and these are things that you know my movies. I've never done that before, so questions of tone were constantly coming up in the script, writing of the script, with mainly with my partner in Paris that you've met, Azimi, who's the co-writer of a lot of my films, an Iranian woman in Paris. And then once I got to India to make the movie, it was a tone was the conversation with the cinematographer and the production designer and the costume designer about how we could keep the movie fun, especially in the first half. How do we stylistically, how does it feel not just real but a bit heightened, that the wallpaper might pop, that the performance might be a touch more so that it would add to the humor. And basically we're chasing Arvind's book the whole time, trying to get to what he had done in the book.
What I love about one of the things, many things I love about the movie is the fact that the rhythm of the film is also you use the verb chasing. It feels like he's running and you're chasing him. You're sort of going after him. It's really wonderful. You're known for.
I have to say though, this was really hard to do in the editing, because normally when you're editing a movie, you invite people into the editing room and then you watch them watch the movie, and it helps you understand pace. It helps you understand where people are confused. It also helps you understand where the jokes or the humor doesn't work. And we were editing the film starting in January. And when March came, no one could come to the editing room anymore because of COVID. And so it was the first time I edited a movie where I couldn't watch people watch the movie except for once. And that was when you came. Towards the last month of editing, we finally just said, okay, just wear a mask. I'll sit 6 feet away from you. You'll sit in front of me. We won't breathe on each other, and I'll watch you watch the movie. And that was honestly, you were the only person that watched the movie that I could watch. And it was helpful. I made the movie shorter, and you had several good notes that I took, actually, including that one about Priyanka not saying you're free. I cut that line. I don't know if you noticed in the final.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. But well, it was a privilege of see. It was a real privilege seeing it. And also about the tone, the narration. The first person narration is the first time you use it. So we are seeing, the story through his eyes and through his words. Was it a good an easy format for you to adopt?
I loved it. The only other time I used anything like that was in my short film Plastic Bag with Werner. That was the one time I used it. It was a short film I did in 2009, which also had humor. That film. That's the closest. That film also jumps around in time, framed by different time periods. Like, weirdly, that short film's the closest thing I'd ever made to The White Tiger. I loved using the voiceover. I knew I was always going to use it. It's a first-person narration in the novel. So in terms of a script, that can be quite tricky to adapt, because you only know what the narrator is seeing and thinking and observing. So the other characters, for example, especially Priyanka's character, Pinky Madam, and also Ashok, those characters had to really be developed in the script, because in the novel, it's just what he imagines them or sees of them. He doesn't really know who they are, which won't work in a movie because you have to develop the character and you have to tell the actor who they are and what their motivations are and all that. So that was kind of fun to do. And I really liked the narration. I looked at movies like Kind Hearts and Cornets, going way back to that, and then Jules Jim, and then moving up in time, I looked at Fight Club and Goodfellas, a little bit of Taxi Driver and Wolf of Wall Street, but kind of in the end, those are the ones that helped.
Adash Gaurav, your lead actor, is an amazing. Is simply amazing. And I remember you telling me that at the audition, he did things that nobody else did, but also that he made you a little scared because you didn't know what he was going to be doing next. And can you describe how that applies to Balram's character. It's perfectly fitting for
Yeah.
Balram's character.
I mean, he came in, sometimes actors come into an audition dressed as they normally dress. Sometimes actors come in dressed how they think the character might be. And he did that, which I appreciated because it helps. And he came in sandals, he took them off and was barefoot, and he crouched down on his haunches, which is a way I know in Iran people sit, especially villagers sit that way in Iran. So immediately I liked all that. And when he smiled, you were so drawn into his face. He has such an inviting face and smile. But when he wasn't smiling and he was serious, you really kind of thought, my God, he could be thinking about any number of things. And that was great because I needed that duality. And I like to improvise a lot with actors in auditions when I like them. And he was excellent at the improvisation. No matter what I did, he could go with it. But it appeared like he was always thinking. And when I watched the first cuts of the movie, I was really impressed by him, as I was on set too. But it seemed like he was always thinking of something. He never just seemed to be there. He seemed to always be alive, even when he wasn't saying anything, he was so alive. And because he's spying a lot on people, of course, it was a blessing. I mean, it was so great to have him.
And you have that amazing scene in the second part of the film where it dawns on him that he was supposed, they're gonna try to get him to sign something that would he would admit guilt for something that he didn't do, and you did that in one, his face in one shot. One single shot goes from being this sort of almost puppy devoted face or now to be just completely disillusioned. And did you always knew that you could get that one shot or
Yeah, I mean, it was planned that way. It's funny you say puppy. I remember in the novel it talked about Balram trying to sit down on the ground like a loyal dog, because when he goes into that room, he thinks they're there to praise him for helping his master. It never occurs to him what they're going to do. And it's such a shift. So there's really only, other than an insert of the paper, there's only 4 shots in the whole scene. And I always imagined that as he was reading it, I was going to move the camera close to him and then just sit there for a long time. And I did a few takes without moving the camera so that he could get the performance. And then I told him the bad news, which was I'm now going to move the camera and it's going to come right here, which means you cannot see the other actor. And there'll be a small piece of tape on the edge of the lens, which is where your eyes should be looking to see the actor who's going to be behind the camera. It's really not easy to do for an actor, especially in a moment like that. And of course, he got nervous. How am I going to do that? The first take wasn't good. But honestly, the second take was good. And the third take was so good, I didn't see any reason to do it again. It's really challenging. You could tell in the moment because I was moved at the monitor, which doesn't happen that often when you're making a movie. And I could tell people around the set were all like, oh my God, you could feel it, that he had done something amazing. He was just an inspiring actor,
The story of the film is essentially a Bildungsroman, where the lead, the protagonist, in order to escape poverty, or the chicken coop, which is the metaphor of of the film, it has to be not only smart, not only really really good, but it has to become corrupt and and then violent and deceiving. So how do you navigate a character like that without alienating him complete, making him alienate the audience completely? And did you ever any pressure, or did you feel any pressure on yourself to make it more endearing, or
I didn't feel that pressure to do that, but it was certainly something we were very conscious of. I mean, I knew a lot of people who loved the novel. I mean, it's a huge hit, the novel. It won the Man Booker Prize. It was a bestseller. I also met people who loved the novel but couldn't accept what he did in the end, and that bothered them. Of course, we're not meant to accept it. We're not meant to say that's a good thing. We should go kill someone. It's supposed to make you a little bit uncomfortable. I think he's probably more quote, endearing, as you say, in the film than in the novel, because in the novel, he tells us in the first chapter that he kills his master, which by the second draft of the script, I moved that to come much later, and I brought forward the hit and run accident to the beginning to change the feeling and also to mislead people. By the time the hit and run happens, you think that's why he's wanted. And then it takes a while for you to realize, oh my God, he's going to do something else. So the book's not like that. And because it's a first person narration in the novel, his voice is coloring everything. And his voice as an entrepreneur is very sarcastic. And you don't have as much of that in the movie. In the movie, when he's a naive young man, you see him more like that. So because of that reason, he ends up being a touch more, you see him transform more from innocent or good natured to corrupt. It was certainly always on our mind. I think one change that happened in the editing room, for example, was there's a moment, a very pivotal moment. The first kind of corrupt thing he does really is get rid of the servant number one because he's a Muslim. He gets rid of that guy, which is a harsh thing to do. And I did have some feedback when I was showing it to people that a handful of people were like, that's really hard to take, to the point that they were concerned that they let go of the character. So I remember adding a shot of him in his office thinking about, ruminating on that moment, like, I don't want to tell you about this thing that I had to do back then.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a change that was made in the editing that wasn't in the script.
Please send question if you have any. I don't want to monopolize the conversation, and I see them here on the chat, but I will continue. You're known to prepare a lot for the films and to prepare on site. You know, you spend a lot of time in Florida when you were doing 99 Homes and writing it and researching it. What was your? Can you tell us what do you do in India? You know, what was your relationship with the place and the people, and how do you build that world while you were there?
Yeah, I went there for a couple months before shooting. The first thing I did was visit all the locations in the novel. Even if they weren't in the script, I wanted to see them. Even if we were never going to shoot them, I wanted to know where were the places Arvind had written about and why. Arvind himself encouraged me to get out of the car, because usually in India, when you come from the West, or if you have a budget, you're traveling by a car. The car is actually talked about a lot in the book, an air-conditioned car, which is different than how the servant class would travel. So I tried to always get out of the car and then start to walk as much as I could from place to place. I spent time talking to drivers in parking lots, or when we would go to look at a rich apartment tower for a location, I would always go down to the garage to try to meet the drivers and then spend a few hours talking to them. That all helped a lot. And then my crew was 99% Indian. I brought about 4 or 5 people with me only. Normally when movies are made with a Western company, you bring an army of human beings with you. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to hire locals. So the grip, the gaffer, the costume designer, the casting director, the production manager, the producers, they were all Indian. That really helped in terms of authenticity. And, I lived in Iran for 3 years. The cultures aren't the same, but there are a lot of similarities. My dad comes from a village very similar to Balram's, take away the water buffalo and make it a donkey. In fact, there's a scene in the movie where Balram is counting the balconies of this big apartment tower that they live in Delhi when they first get there. This was an improvised scene that I thought of when I was there because I remembered my dad telling me when he went to the big city for the first time, he couldn't understand like how the buildings were so tall and why they didn't fall down, and could you breathe up there? These were things he told me were in his head. And so I thought, if it was my dad here, he would count these balconies and wonder how did it happen. So those kind of feelings, I know those from living in Iran.
I have a question from Christine. Could you talk about the incredible music selection in the film?
Oh, thanks. Yeah. Well, the movie takes place in 2007, so we were trying to find, music that might be of that era and might remind people of that era. And that first track, Punjabi MC, Beware the Boys, featuring Jay-Z, was such a huge hit at that time. And to this day, it's still played at weddings, you know? And it seemed like an awesome song to start the movie with, to just flip things around. You know, you're like, oh, I'm going to go see a movie set in India. And suddenly you're hearing that song with that style and that pace in the beginning. That was all to not that different from 99 Homes. It was a misdirect again. Like I remember when 99 Homes came to Venice and people were like, oh, it's going to be a sad movie about people getting kicked out of their homes. And then suddenly the movie starts and it's a dead guy in a bathroom, and it seems like it's a detective story suddenly. That was all to immediately throw people off of what they think they're going to look at, you know? And then, you know, it's finding other cool songs like Fat Joe, and there's a few other really awesome Punjabi or Hindi tracks of music that we really liked. And then two awesome composers, Danny and Sander, to do the score. Yeah.
I have a question from Anne Trotsky. Was the wife, the female lead, true to the book?
Not really. No, it's pretty different. I was kind of hinting at this earlier. In the novel, in both the novel and the film, this is all from Balram's perspective, right? But the novel much more so. So in the novel, she's painted more as she's quite aggressive to Balram. She doesn't really connect with him. She's quite nasty to him, actually. Parts that are true, yeah, she hits that kid in a drunk driving accident. She tries to say what they're doing is wrong, but she still leaves and gets on a plane. So that all is true. But no, in the novel, she's not a chiropractor. In the novel, she didn't grow up in Jackson Heights from the age of 12. She doesn't have that scene on the sofa where she tells Balram to, you know, find a new way of doing things and to, you know, think about his life. All that kind of stuff was made up in the script.
Yeah. From Donovan, how did you work with such a range of actors? Some are so unknown and others very, very big stars. How did you work together? How did they work together? Sorry.
I mean, for me, I have a long history of that. I mean, my first three films are almost entirely with non-professional actors, sometimes with one or two actors mixed in. Even in 99 Homes, there's actors and non-actors mixed in. So here, everyone's an actor actually in this film. But yes, Adarsh, it's his first leading role. He's done supporting roles before. He had a full scholarship to the best acting school in India. What's hard for people to understand because they don't know who he is, he's not that character. That's not who he is in real life. And I started to realize when the movie came out, people just thought, oh, he's just being himself. No, those were all choices, you know. I remember one time I asked him, how would you walk as a servant and how would you walk as a master? And one week later, he said, I have 12 walks I want to audition for you. And he did. He auditioned 12 ways of walking. And I said, I like these two the most. He's like, I like those too. I said, okay, pick whichever one you want. So he was fully invested. But of course, yeah, Priyanka Chopra and Rajkumar Rao, the two masters, are huge stars. Rajkumar Rao is a huge star in India and globally. And then, of course, Priyanka's an international star. They were awesome. They were as invested as him. They were as open to improvisation as him. And they were totally egoless. They were so friendly to the crew. They were totally welcoming of Adarsh as a new actor. They knew he was the star of the movie. Not for 1 second did they think they were the stars of the movie. They knew they were the supporting stars. And they just fostered a great environment. I think you can tell in the movie they like each other. I think you can tell they actually like each other, you know?
Well,
which made my job easy.
Well, I think which also adds to the ambivalence between, you know, in the relationship between them and Balram. How easy when you have a star of the caliber of Priyanka to shoot in the middle of the street and
Can't do it. Yeah, you can't do it. There's a scene where she just has to get out of a car with Rajkumar Rao and go into a shopping mall. This took weeks of negotiation. And finally, they gave us a 1 hour window at like 7 a.m. And then they're like, she has to leave or there will be a riot. And the thankfully, she didn't have a lot of scenes in outside areas. But the hit and run accident where she has to get out of the car and they have to look to see what's happened, that was literally the only location we could find to do it in because we could control it. That road is weirdly behind a stadium. So we had full lockdown around it. There were other roads I went to. I was like, I love this road. They're like, yes, but down that street, there's an opening that people could come. And I said, we'll just get more security. They're like, even if we bring the police, we will not be able to control the riot that will happen for people to get to Priyanka. So it's something that we don't have in the West. It's a different kind of star power.
Your films have been growing bigger, but this is like it's a balloon from your other production, and yet it was amazing to me how it feels effort. You make it feel effortless. Was it strenuous for you to get to a size that is so bigger in cast, in budget, and the number of locations, and you just make it feel like you were born for it, and that I thought it was pretty stunning.
I appreciate you saying that. It was a big, compared to my other films, it was much bigger. It was 60 days of shooting, which is like 25 days more than I'm used to having. It's an epic story, as you said, so there's a lot going on. There's also a lot of scenes. There's a lot of short scenes that have narration on them. It's probably 100 more scenes than I'm used to having in a movie. I don't know what to say, Giulia. I've been reading the book for 15 years. I knew it really well. My actors were so good. I just felt very comfortable making it. I loved my crew, and you know me. I'm not the most fun person. I'm usually with serious conversation. We're going to talk about something serious today, and movies are important. But the themes of this movie are really, really going to be very important, Julia, and we're going to discuss them. But I don't know. The book was so funny, and the book was so fun that I kept actually telling myself I should have fun today making this movie. And I would tell the cinematographer, the movie should be fun. Let's have fun making it. And I don't know, I had fun making it. I don't know if that will always result in a good movie, but thank God it worked this time.
And to this point from Micah.
Actually, I have to tell you, this morning I was talking to Azimi, the Bahar Azimi, but for people listening, she's an Iranian woman who lives in France who was the co-writer of my movies, Chomp Shop, Goodbye Solo, 99 Homes, and she's a producer on this film. And I was going for a walk this morning talking to her about our next projects. And as we were discussing one of them, she said, do you remember how we actually had fun writing The White Tiger? We need to make sure we do that for the next project. So it's something on our mind.
It was to the point of what you were talking before from Micah. Can you please talk about your relationship with the author, with the book's author?
Yeah, Arvind and I met at Columbia in the mid-90s. Columbia University in New York at the undergraduate program. There was a group of us, Iranians, Indians, Afghans, Syrians, Lebanese, that found one another and became friends. And our friendship started because he wanted to be a writer and I wanted to be a filmmaker, and most of the others didn't want to do that. And so he reminded me recently that a big part of our friendship was when I asked a group of these kids to come watch a movie in my dorm room, and it was Mean Streets by Scorsese. And everyone left. Everyone left except for Arvind because it wasn't like a fun movie, and there was no sex in it really, and there was nothing going on, so everyone just took off. But Arvind stayed, and I kept talking about this movie as if it was what I felt was something important. Dostoevsky, all the things I want to talk about, jump cut, the voiceover narration, the personal nature of it, etc. And then we watched Taxi Driver like the next week. And so somehow cinema has been one of the, much more than books, cinema is what we talk about more than books. It was the start of a 25-year friendship. And we're talking about fun, like at that age, when he wrote The White Tiger, I think I was finishing Chop Shop when he wrote The White Tiger. And then when he won the Man Booker Prize, I was in London. I'd shown Goodbye Solo in Venice, and then it went to, I think, to London. And he was there. He won the Man Booker Prize while I was there. We met in the street the next morning. And I think there was something about that time, the time of Pushcart, Chop Shop, Solo, and White Tiger, where you're just young enough that you feel you could do anything. You don't understand that there are rules. You don't know what no means. You're just doing what you feel like, you know? And I tried to make this movie that way, you know, trying to remember that spirit of being young, you know?
Well, I think it would be interesting if you explain how did you get Netflix to how did you convince Netflix to actually let you make this film?
Well, I didn't make the movie initially for a variety of reasons. Not because I didn't want to, I just didn't know if the time was right. But then Arvind called me about 4 years ago and said, "What do you think about making The White Tiger?" I said, "I would love to do it. I've always wanted to do it. Do I have your blessing to do it?" He said, "Yeah, I think it would be good to make it." So I found the rights holder in India, Mukul Deora, who became my producing partner. He was awesome. He was great to work with. He was talking to two companies, Netflix and an independent company. And I was like, Netflix, just go there because they'll give us a better budget and they can release the film globally. The movie's going to be with an all Indian cast. It's in India. It's going to be probably 20-30% in Hindi. Who knows who's going to watch it? And they can hit every country in the world. Let's just do that. And he agreed. He liked that too. And it didn't actually take any convincing. They just wanted to do it. They loved the book. They said they wanted to work with me. They thought there was potential in it. India was becoming a very important market for them. It was a huge title. And they said, yeah, get to work on a script. And that's kind of what happened.
From Russell, what has been the reception of the film in India?
The reception's been really good. It was, I think, #1 in India on Netflix between movies and series for like 2 or 3 weeks. It just wouldn't go away. Just huge numbers. I think I haven't read reviews. I'll tell you the truth. On this film, it was the first time in my life I didn't read any reviews, but I hear enough things from people. I think it's been very well received there. And then, of course, there are people who don't like it as they didn't like the book because, you know, it's not showing, you know, a beautiful landscape with beautiful people doing beautiful things all the time.
Well, part of the beauty is that it just completely avoids the exoticism, you know, this sort of way of painting India either lavishly rich and golden or just abysmally poor and ugly, you know.
Yeah.
You just find a much more vital way to do it. Did you ever consider writing the script with Arvind or no?
Arvind, from the very beginning, said, "This will be the only script you've written that I will never look at. I don't want to read it. I don't have anything to do with it. Novels and scripts are completely different art forms. Do whatever you want, change whatever you want. You have my blessing to do whatever you want, but I don't want to read it. I'll answer questions if you have questions about the book, but I don't want to read it." And initially he said he wouldn't watch the film, but then thank God he watched it when it was over and liked it. But I respect that. It's a certainly a strong feeling. He just, even now I'm doing a new film with Netflix from another book by Arvind, and he's against it. I won't read the script. So.
We have time for a couple of more questions. I have one myself. Was there any guiding stylistic idea that you really wanted to have from the beginning, or not?
I remember I was 6 weeks or 7 weeks out, and I was very nervous because I couldn't see the movie in my head. I still couldn't see it despite being in prep. And then little by little, it started to come how I wanted to shoot it. And there's so many worlds in the film. I wanted those worlds to look different. Village, rich villa in Dhanbad, upstairs, downstairs in Delhi, and then futuristic glass city of Bangalore, the future, you know? And each one had a different visual strategy for the most part. And then a couple of movies, there were a few movies that were helpful. Goodfellas was helpful in some way. Kieslowski's 1 and 5 were helpful from the Decalogue 1 and 5. There's something about the lenses in that movie, where the lens is in relationship to the actor and the landscape, that felt really psychological and mysterious. Like you were in someone's head, even if you didn't know everything that was going on. So that those helped open up the movie. And then the more I got to the locations, the more I started to see it. Like, you know, the part where he's an entrepreneur in Bangalore, it's a lot of steady cam movement. It's a lot of the camera is moving with his confidence. I wanted to feel his confidence. In the village, it's all handheld. Even if it's on a dolly, it's on a dolly handheld. You know, the rich villa in Donbot is wide lenses and steady cam and dollies, so you would see him in this big new clean world. You know, so there were a lot of, again, movement, a lot of movement, as you said, trying to catch up to the pace of it all the time, moving. You know.
Speaking of the village, was the grandmother an actress
Yeah.
Yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah, she was an actress that in the last second, the feedback came from India. X number of words she said don't have the right accent. So it was during COVID. So we had to find the sound guy in Mumbai, had to fly to Delhi and drive 2 hours north to find Granny and get her to say a handful of words again that we could then, you know, slip in and mix. Even sometimes just a consonant, even 2 letters, we would mix them together so you couldn't tell, so that her accent would be more authentic. Yeah.
I'm giving the last question to Whitney. Did you look at other popular Indian films or films about India in preparation?
Not a ton, honestly. I grew up in college with Satyajit Ray as a major impact on me. When I was at Columbia, Scorsese restored and released about 9 Ray films. I don't know if you remember this, Julia, at Dan Talbot's cinema, at the Lincoln Plaza.
He did the trilogy, right?
He did the trilogy, but like 6 others after that.
I don't remember that.
Every 2 weeks, you could go to the Lincoln Plaza, and we would go from Columbia, watch. In fact, Arvind and I would go a lot, and a couple of our other friends, and then we would walk back to Columbia talking about the films. And then there's a lot of new independent Indian cinema that I like a lot. Movies like Court. I don't know if you saw that one.
Oh, yes, we had it in Venice.
Oh, really? I like that film. Yeah. And there's a handful of other ones too that I like a lot, and they're new indie films. And then there's Anurag's films, of course, who I think I first met in Venice, maybe.
Yes, I think or either I put you in touch, I forgot, but yes.
There, I think, a decade ago. In fact, Gangs of Waisawpur is the neighboring town to Donbad.
In the village.
Yeah, that old town. I took a picture of it, the sign that said "Welcome to Waisawpur." Yeah.
Well, for everyone, Ramin is already on production with something else, and so we won't keep him any further, and our time is up. But I am very grateful that he could share this time with us today. We've been wanting to show the movie. We will be showing the movie in the cinema, and hopefully he'll come and say hello at the same time. And
I have to, because Julia, I've never seen the movie with any other human beings. Like, I haven't seen it with an audience. You know, I've never sat and seen the movie with 10, 20, 30, 40 people. Never.
That must be so puzzling for a filmmaker.
It's weird. It's so weird.
Yeah. Well, we will hopefully fix that at Inside Harbor before too long. In the meantime, thank you again, Ramin, for joining us, and thanks everybody for coming this afternoon. Bye.
Bye, Julia. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.